So can we start introducing ourselves? Adiba, could you go first?
Yeah, so my name is Adiba Jaigirdar. My pronouns are she, her. My book is The Henna Wars. It's out now. It's about Nishat, who is a Bangladeshi Muslim and a lesbian. She comes out to her parents, and she's dealing with the fallout of that, while she's also competing in a business competition with a girl that she has a crush on. But the girl is culturally appropriating henna from her. So she's grappling with all of those things at the same time.
Okay, thank you. Katherine, can you go next?
Sure. My name is Katherine Locke. My pronouns are they, them. I edited It's a Whole Spiel, which is a collection of Jewish short stories, including queer stories. And then I wrote a Jewish, very queer book in which Nazis get punched and all the queer people live.
Thank you. Camryn.
I forgot what I was supposed to say. My name and the pronouns and something about my book.
Yes, please.
Okay, my name's Camryn Garrett. I wrote Full Disclosure, and it's about a girl who starts at a new school, and she's trying to hide the fact that she's HIV positive, but it gets harder when she falls for a boy and starts receiving mysterious letters that tell her to stay away from him.
Nice, thank you. And Katie?
Hi, I'm Katie Henry. My pronouns are she, her, and my book is Let's Call It a Doomsday. And it's about a girl named Ellis, who is a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, often referred to as Mormons, who is grappling both with a pretty severe anxiety disorder centered around the end of the world, and meets a girl in her therapist's office who thinks she knows when the end of the world is going to happen.
Thank you all. I'm Gabriela Martins. My pronouns are she, her. I edited the anthology Keep Faith, featuring various queer authors. And I'm very excited to be here with you all today. Thank you. My first question to you is, how does faith come into your writing? Katie, can you start?
Sure. So actually, both my books deal with faith. Let's Call It a Doomsday, and also my first book, which is Heretics Anonymous and is set at a Catholic school. And I started writing about religion, I think just because I genuinely consider it so fascinating and such an important part of our world. And I think particularly for young people and teenagers growing up in an increasingly changing world, faith and the lack of faith is both a huge part of their lives, and figuring out what you believe in and what you don't believe in, for me, was a huge part of my adolescence. And so I've tried to put it in all of my writing as well.
Okay, thank you. Katherine, how does faith come into your writing?
I don't think that I can separate my faith from who I am. I think being Jewish is so integral to my identity that it comes into my books because that is so familiar. That's my entry point for characters and for a world. I think that also it provides, when you're talking about minority religions too, it's really important for me to talk about minority religions, to bring minority religions, my minority religion, to the page for more representation there. And then once we started talking about intersections with marginalized religions, it gets even more complicated. But it was really important to me to have books in which Jewish characters lived and didn't die, because those were the only books that I had growing up. So pretty similar to how I interact with queer characters on the page is that I didn't want tragic Jewish stories the same way that I didn't want tragic queer stories. So merging them together felt like a really natural path forward in my work.
Thank you. Camryn, how does faith come into your writing?
It's a little awkward because it doesn't really. Yeah. So I think I'm the representation of being agnostic or atheist here. And yeah.
Okay. Would you say that this also helps shape your characters and stories?
I think so. I think that because I'm sorry, I'm being so awkward, but I think that because there isn't like the central faith in their lives, there's a lot more focus on where they can find that sort of love or belonging from other people. So that's where the longing to fit in becomes stronger. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. It really does. Awesome. Thank you. Adiba, how does faith come into your writing?
So my answer is basically the same as Catherine's, I think, because for me, I think it would be very difficult to divorce faith from my writing or from myself, just because, I was brought up Muslim, and for me, like my culture is Muslim. So when we talk about Islam, we talk about how Islam is like a way of life. So it really it shapes everything about you. It shapes how you view the world. And I think even if you leave the religion, a lot of the time, or most of the time, the culture stays with you. So, for me, like Muslim culture, Muslim faith, it's just such a huge part of who I am. So even if I tried to, I couldn't really separate it from my writing. But also for me, I've seen so much diversity in Muslim people just because I have Muslim friends, I have Muslim family. I've met like probably hundreds of Muslim people in my life, but I've never seen that reflected on the page. When I was growing up, I never saw any Muslims in fiction, or when I did see them, there were complete stereotypes. So I think the first time I saw like a Muslim character that I really resonated with was S.K. Ali's Saints and Misfits. And then again, S.K. Ali's Love from A to Z. So basically everything S.K. Ali writes. But and when S.K. Ali published that book, it was 2017. I was already an adult, which is like, it's awesome because I love her books, but it's awful because you shouldn't have to be an adult to see a reflection of yourself on the page. So what I wanted to do as well was to write the diverse Muslims that I see and meet and speak to in real life into books.
Thank you. Thank you. And we are very happy that you do. Katherine, I have a question for you. Why was it so important for you to put together this whole spiel? And can you tell us a little bit more about the process of the anthology, of going from an idea to a book in your hands?
Sure. So It's a Whole Spiel is a book I co-edited, or anthology I co-edited with Laura Silverman, and it was Laura's brainchild. She called me. We had debuted in the same year, and so she had sent me a DM and was like, "Hey, can we chat on the phone?" And we were not phone friends authors before this. I was like, "Sure, is everything okay?" It was February 2017, so it was in the wake of the election and the wake of JCC bomb threats, and that January was a lot. So she called me and she was like, "I really feel like we need Jewish stories that are contemporary and positive and upbeat and meet teens where they are now." So we started putting it together, and it came together pretty quickly. We had a proposal by the middle of the spring, and it sold in early fall. And it came out like a year later, I think. Must have come out. No, 2 years later. I don't know what year it is anymore. Time is very fluid right now. But it was a really wonderful experience. It was one of those things where I've never felt more Jewish than when I was editing this anthology, and less Jewish when I was editing this anthology. And those existed at the same time, because there are secular Jews, Reform Jews, conservative Jews, modern Orthodox, and Orthodox Jews all represented in one anthology. And so there were stories that came from very different backgrounds than mine. And I was like, I have no idea what's happening in the story, or how do you edit something that's this far outside of your own experience. And it was a really interesting moment to be like, I'm Jewish and the author's Jewish, and this is like a whole new world to me in this book. So that was really fun, and it was a really wonderful experience to put it together. It's been really fun to talk to Jewish teens about it, and to have queer Jewish representation, and to have Dahlia Adler said that it was really an anthology about anxiety, but masked in an anthology about Judaism, which is like the American Jewish experience in general, is anxiety. So it's really interesting to like all of the characters have anxiety. So that was fun too, to have that representation on the page, and to see which stories resonated with different people, and different reviewers and different teens and teachers. And it's been a really fun thing to put into the world.
Thank you. I love how you mentioned the plurality of experiences, that, you know, everything is Judaism, but from very different angles. And I think that people that are not religious, they often forget that there are many ways to experience any religion, right? Mm-hmm. So I love that you brought that up.
Yeah, I mean, it's my story in the anthology is all about a kid who is writing fan fiction on a site that reimagines every character as Jewish. So we span from like that to Goldie Moldavsky's story, which is about two girls who are trying desperately to get to a party on Shabbat when they can't write anything down and they can't use phones and they can't remember the address. And so like, it's a wide variety of Jewish experiences. It's such a fun story. I love it so much. But it's all Jewish. It's that, and that's what we really wanted. I think that as a Jewish teen who grew up Reform, Orthodox Jews were really othered in my world. Like that was considered so other to see somebody who observed that way. And I really wanted Reform teens to stop othering people that are under the same Jewish umbrella. And I wanted to bring the Reform and secular experience and say, this too is Jewish to teens who observe differently than we do.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. Camryn, full disclosure is such a sex positive book. And I would love it if you could talk a little bit about that. Like, was your relationship with faith or lack thereof have an effect in how you approached writing this very sex-positive book?
I grew up very Christian, so while that's like a majority religion, it also really influenced the way that I and family members viewed sex. And I talked a lot, while promoting the book, I've talked a lot about how my friends and I didn't know a lot about sex, but it's interesting because when I think about it, my friends and I were all raised Christian or Catholic or like some form of Christianity, and thinking a lot about how that's influenced the culture around sex and how it should be taught or whether it should be taught in schools. So it wasn't necessarily rebelling against the religion, but rebelling against the way people use the religion to stifle the sexuality of others that I thought was really important. And Simone has two dads, and one of the dads is still a practicing Catholic. And I wanted to show that because I wanted to show that queerness and faith aren't, oh God, I forgot the word, that you can be queer and you can still have faith in a religion, and that you don't have to pick one or the other. And that just because certain religions have, what's the word? I am so sorry that I keep forgetting things. That certain religions have been used to oppress others, especially queer people. That doesn't mean that you still can't find hope and faith within them.
That's very powerful. Thank you. Thanks for sharing that. Katie, in Let's Call It a Doomsday, you dealt, like you said before, right? Not only the intersection of religion and queerness, but also of mental illness. So can you, I'm sorry. Can you tell us a little bit more about the process of writing this book that not only had this intersection of queerness and faith, but also of mental illness and how that plays into the book?
Yeah, definitely. It's a lot of issues. Ellis has a lot of things going on, but I think so many themes do have the intersections of both sexuality and mental health and religion. I definitely did. but yeah, I tried to show in this book kind of the duality of Ellis's faith in terms of her mental health, that it is both like a hugely calming presence for her. It's a positive thing for her. She loves her religion. She finds a lot of good in her very tight-knit community. It gives her a lot of peace. But it is also responsible for a lot of her anxious fixations. She starts the book very, very uncomfortable with her sexuality, kind of refusing to deal with it. And that definitely is partly a result of being a member of a faith that is conservative and non-affirming, unfortunately, at least institutionally, though her own ward, which is what Mormons call congregations, is very affirming and very welcoming. She still feels that anxiety, and it feeds into her pre-existing mental health struggles. So yeah, just the fact that her religion can both deeply help her and definitely make things worse was something that I wanted to reflect on the page.
I really like this duality of it helping, but at the same time being the cause of the problem as well, because it goes back to something Katherine said about never having felt more Jewish or less. I really like how faith can bring this duality in our feelings.
Definitely.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks.
Adiba, The Henna Wars is set in an all-girls Catholic school. So Nishat, she doesn't only face one type of homophobia coming from a religious angle. She actually faces two types of homophobia based on religious beliefs. So can you tell us why you chose to contrast these two sides and how did you do it?
Yeah, so when I started writing the book and I decided that Nishat was going to be queer and she was going to be Muslim, and that she was going to have to kind of grapple with what that meant, I was thinking about, I guess, the baggage that people would already come to this book with, because so many people have these perceptions of what Muslim people are like, especially in regards to queerness and homophobia. You can see, like, whenever people want to be Islamophobic, so many of them will say, you know, gay people are being killed in Muslim countries, without really grappling with what that means, because it means that Muslim queer people are the ones who are suffering the most. So I kind of knew that that was about like some baggage that I would have to deal with. So what I wanted to do with the book was ensure that it was written in a way where you could understand that Nishat's parents were having difficulty understanding her queerness, not because of their religion, but that they were using their religion as a way to do that. And I think a good way to do that was to contrast it with Catholicism as well, because obviously Ireland is a very Catholic country, and Ireland has a very fraught history with queerness. I don't know if any of you have heard of like the Magdalene laundries in Ireland. Yeah, so do you know, Gabby?
Nope, I was just waiting for somebody else to ask, actually.
Okay. So the Magdalene laundries, it was basically this institution created by the church. Usually it was run by nuns, and it's where women would be sent off for doing certain things that they considered were sins. So, for example, if you had a child out of wedlock, if you were raped, if you were queer, if it seemed like you were attracting too many boys, so you were like a slut, you know, all of these things, you would be sent off to the Magdalene laundries, and you were treated really horribly when you were there. You were made to do like all of these things. Like they would cut off people's hair as like punishment, things like that. It was awful. And then, what they would actually do is, like, women who had babies at these Magdalene laundries, they would often like give them up for adoption to people without actually telling the mothers. So a lot of these children are still separated from their mothers. And when they come to search for them, the nuns often lie to them and like don't actually help them, unite with their parents. There's like a lot of other things that have come to light recently as well. But I think the last Magdalene laundries that closed in Ireland was in the 1990s. So we're not talking about this like in the far past. This is like, very present day, like people alive now obviously remember the Magdalene laundries. They're still being affected by it. And the church has a huge presence in Ireland. Like our schools are mostly run by the church. So I went to an all-girls Catholic school, but the church haven't really answered for all of these things that they did, all of these abuses and harm caused to women, and specifically, queer women as well. So I guess what I want to do was looking at, how Muslims look at queerness, but also I wanted to look at how Catholics look at queerness and how that's also a space and an environment where I guess homophobia can brew. So I didn't want to say like all Catholics are homophobic and all Muslims are homophobic. I just wanted to show, I guess, what my experience has been like and what the experience is living in Ireland, being Catholic or being Muslim, and just existing in those spaces.
Thank you so much for that. My question for you was going to be like, okay, but we're talking about something that happened a really long time ago, right? And then you were like, oh, 1990s. Like, what? This is horrifying. But yeah, obviously I'm a queer person as well. And I went to a Catholic school. And I can... I can tell where you're coming from with that. Yeah, been through some stuff there. I would love to ask you all, what do you hope to see in terms of religious approaches in YA? So moving forward, Camryn, what are some of the things you hope to see?
I'd really like to see more, because I feel like it's very recent that religion has been discussed more in YA. I feel like before it really wasn't talked about. So I'd like to see more teens exploring their faith and not necessarily being a total atheist, but believing in some tenets of the religion or believing in the existence of a higher power, but not being sure where they stand where it comes to their family's religion, because that mirrors a lot of my own experiences. And I don't think that I see it enough.
Yeah, I love that. I just want to say that I feel like this would be so powerful, so important, and a book like that would have helped me a lot, like when I was a teen. Yeah, thank you. Katie, how about you? What do you hope to see?
I think I really hope to see multiple perspectives on religion within the same book. Because I think most of the books about religion that I read growing up were either like religious books and there are no problems with the church and everything's great, or they were, people leaving, totally abandoning. And something that was important for me to do in Let's Call the Doomsday was to have not just a main character who loves her faith and believes and wants to stay, but to also have a character, one of her friends, who has left the same church, in part, but not entirely, because he's bi. Because I just wanted to have the acknowledgement that religion can be really great and really personally wonderful, without ignoring the huge damage that religion can do. And I was so glad that you brought up the Magdalene laundries. I grew up Catholic and in an Irish family, and those traumas can be generational and very deep. So especially if you do have a religious character who's happy with their own faith, being able to acknowledge and grapple with the parts that are really deeply harmful is something that I would like to see in more books.
Thank you. Yes, that's very, very important as well. Thank you. Adiba, what would you like to see more of?
I think what I would like to see is people being religious just in general. Like it's not like a huge thing, that it doesn't have to be like, oh, my book is about a queer Muslim girl and she's dealing with, her Muslim family and her Muslim community. It can just be, somebody's going on an adventure and they're Muslim, or, somebody's doing something and they're Jewish or whatever. I just think, like, for me, obviously religion is part of my life. So whatever I'm doing, religion is going to play a part in it, whether I'm on a fantasy adventure in space or sitting at home or falling in love or whatever is happening. Religion is going to be a part of all of those stories. So I would love to see that, like, reflected in books where characters are just casually religious.
I love that, casual religion. I like that. Thank you. Katherine.
I'm going to second everything Adiba just said, because casual religion would be something that I would like to see much more in YA. I think there's this idea that, like, you don't talk about politics and money and religion, and that we've let that seep into books. But politics, the way money structures our society, and religion all shape who we are and how we interact with the world. And I'd like more frank conversations about all three of those things in books. So yeah, I was trying to think of queer Jewish books, and I have a list of 3, and they all overlap. One is my own, one I co-edited, one is Laura's standalone, and she also co-edited Spiel, where somebody's explicitly Jewish on the page. And I have a lot of feelings about what makes a book Jewish and what makes a book not Jewish and all of those things, and that's a different discussion. But I would like to see more Jews who are practicing whatever type of denomination within Judaism that they are, practicing Judaism and being queer on the page. I think that is really, really important, and that we're missing reaching so many readers, and we're failing readers in the lack of religious queer books. We're fundamentally failing readers in that way.
Thank you. Thank you. Moving on to our audience questions. I have a couple of fun ones, and I wanted to start with a very deep question that I gotta say I was a little jealous that I didn't think of myself. And it is, what are some of the rewards and challenges when writing intersectional identities? So not only with faith, but intersectional, knowing all of your work. I know that you all write intersectionally. So the rewards and challenges. Okay, Adiba, can you start?
I guess for rewards is just that I can't really not write intersectionally, because for me, obviously, like, I exist in the intersection of many marginalizations. So it's just natural for me to write through my experience, through my lens of the world. So I guess the reward is that I get to kind of see my experience on the page, but also that there are readers who are like me, who also exist within the intersection of certain marginalizations, and they also get to see that. And I guess it's rare for them to see that as well. So like Nishat, for example, she's queer, she's Muslim, and she's also South Asian. So queer Muslims are not that common, I guess, in the reader space. Queer South Asians are a lot more common, even if they're not Bangladeshi like Nishat. So I've had so many, queer South Asians reach out to me and say that, they're so happy to read this book because they had never read about, like, a queer brown person before. They'd never read about a queer South Asian person before. So that's definitely very, very rewarding to hear. It makes me very happy when readers reach out and say that stuff. The challenges, I think, are that it's very difficult to write within intersections, especially, I guess, when you're not writing about the intersections that you exist within. So, for example, in the Henna Wars, Flavia is also an intersectional character because she's biracial. So her mom is Afro-Brazilian and her dad is white Irish, and she's also bisexual. So that is, that's a lot of intersections, and I'm not any of those things. So it was challenging to bring nuance to her character and just to try and understand where she was coming from and how her identity might inform what she's doing on the page, what her story is, and who she is as a character. And, I had to do research. I had to talk to a lot of people. I had to talk to my friend Gabby, who is Brazilian. I just think it is challenging to write outside of your own experience, but it's also worthwhile. It's also rewarding because likewise, a lot of Brazilian readers have reached out to me to say how much they connected with Flavia's character. So I think, the rewards and challenges really go hand in hand.
Thank you. Thank you. Camryn, how do you feel about this? What are some of the rewards and challenges of writing intersectionally?
I think the rewards are that it's extremely cathartic. It's writing someone who, even if they aren't exactly like you, who still share a lot of the same identities, so that you can discuss microaggressions or issues that you face on a daily basis that sometimes feel erased. I would say one of the challenges is, specifically with intersections too, you can feel like you're the only one and that you are expected to represent everyone. So for example, I'm Black and queer and a woman, and it can feel like whenever I write a character who shares all of those identities, I'm expected to represent everyone when that's impossible. And it can be very stressful and scary.
Yes. Let's hope that more authors can keep writing intersectionally, right? Because I definitely agree. I think we all agree with what Camryn said. There's a lot of pressure on authors, especially POC authors, to write a universal experience that doesn't exist, right? Nobody has the universal experience. Katie, how about you? Some rewards and challenges.
Yeah, I mean, echoing what everyone else has said so far, it's definitely more complicated. And I think another one of the challenges, at least for me personally, is getting a little bit of pushback about this character has too much, has too many things. And people encourage you through the editorial process to focus more closely, and having to advocate for no, this is a real person and she can be a lot of things all at once. And it's more difficult to balance the narratives and make sure that your book doesn't feel overloaded. But then the rewards, as has been said, is that you're writing about people who really do exist, that people do live and exist in these intersections, and definitely hearing from readers who live at that intersection is so valuable, and I feel like makes it all worth it.
Thank you. Thank you. Katherine. If your cat wants to join us, it's okay.
I know, he's trying very hard, so you'll see his tail coming up. So I think that everything everyone else was saying, I think that pushback, I have not felt that pushback in the editorial process, but I do feel it when the book is out in the world. So there are conservative Jewish spaces where I think Spiel would be a really great anthology, but they won't take it because the very first story in the anthology is queer. So that's hitting those intersections of that pushback about those intersections can be really frustrating, because very few of us are just one thing, right? Most of us exist at intersections, and an increasing number of people exist and identify very publicly and acknowledge their intersections. So the idea that we are just one thing feels so limiting as a writer when I'm writing a character, and as a person who wants to send this book into the world. So the joy is that I feel like characters are most real and most authentic and most available for readers when they are intersectional, when they're more than me boiling them down to this one facet of their identity. when they are grappling with many different issues in their lives, including being queer and being religious, struggling with mental health, and all of these other marginalized identities that, when they connect, create further marginalizations, and it turtles all the way down. So yeah, I think that it's both a joy to be able to send that into the world, because there's no character that has so much that there's not exactly one person in the world who also identifies with that character. And to be able to reach that one reader and be like, you matter. All of those things and how they come together for you matters. That's worth it for me as a creative person, right? So it's worth putting up with the pushback from institutions and gatekeepers and booksellers and librarians who think this is too much for one book, or too much for one character, or wow, it was really doing a lot, don't you think? It's worth putting up with that to reach readers. So it's both a joy and a challenge at the exact same time.
Thank you so much for saying that. Wow, I got a little emotion. But you were right. Reaching that one person is worth it. Thank you. Yes. Okay. I have a much lighter question for you all now that is also from an audience member. Which of your characters would be friends if they met in real life? So just because of Camryn's face, I would like to start with her. Because we're like,
I'm confused. Like, what do you wait? But they're all in the same book. Do you know what I mean? I'm confused.
like,
You mean like with
existed
someone
in
else?
real life? No, with you. Like, if they existed in real life, which one of them would you be friends with?
Oh, would I be friends with? I thought you were saying which characters would be friends with each other. I'm like, they're all already friends.
Sorry, maybe I phrased it correctly.
I would probably be friends with Simone, even though I'd get tired of hearing about like the musical theater all the time. But I would hang out, and I wouldn't mind hearing about like the sex stuff. It would be cool.
Awesome. Katherine.
As you hear my cat bite me in the background, I would probably be it would be easiest for me to be friends with Wolf from The Spy with the Red Balloon and Gabe from My Story and It's a Whole Spiel, because they are most like me. So that would be easiest. Ilsa is based on my sister, and I love my sister very dearly, but I also need breaks. So I don't think that would last very long.
That's fair. Thank you. Adiba.
So I think I wouldn't be friends with Nishat, first of all, just because I think Nishat and I are very similar. We're both very headstrong. So we would always like argue and everything. So it probably, like, we might be friends, but it'd be a very like tumultuous friendship. I think I would be friends with Flavia and I think we could have a lot to talk about and we could learn a lot from each other. And also, Flavia is Brazilian, and for some reason, like, all of my close friends are Brazilian. So it's fate.
Can I just say that reason is called good taste? Also would love to be friends with Flavia.
So I don't think that I would be friends with my protagonist in Let's Call It a Doomsday because she is so close to me. Like, I feel like I couldn't handle her. But I love all of her friends, so I think I'd just kick her out and insert myself very neatly in there. And then in my first book, I have a character named Lucy whose greatest life aspiration is to be the first female Catholic priest. And she and I both are interested in very, very weird, gross church history. So I think we would have a ton to talk about.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Friends, can you tell our audience where to find you? Adiba.
Yeah, so you can find me on my website, which is adibajaigirdar.com. You can find me on Twitter at adiba_J or on Instagram on DIBS_J.
Thank you. Katherine.
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram as Bibliogato, BiblioGato, and on KatherineLockeBooks.com.
Camryn?
You can find me at CamrynGarrett.com, I think, and at Dancing of Pens on Twitter.
Thank you. Casey?
You can find me online at katiehenrywrites.com and on Twitter and Instagram at KT_NRE, because it sounds like Katie Henry. That's where you can find me.
Very good. Thank you all so much for coming today and joining our panel. It was a great pleasure to chat with you all. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.